Let's take a look at some information and charts on REN for BraveNewCoin. So REN, the protocol, and the token both have a clear use case. The idea here is that you can send any token to other chains. Currently they have limited availability for specific chains and specific tokens, but it's inter-blockchain liquidity. You send in your BTC or your whatever through the REN VM, and it spits out the REN version of that product on a specific chain, acting as a bridge between the chains without any need for specific integrations between those chains. And REN is able to do this through a series of dark nodes, in that you need 10,000 REN to create a dark node, very similar to a Masternode. So these Masternodes act as dark pools and mint the REN version of the asset you send, and the REN dark nodes receive a fee from the user, and that's how they sort of collect interest on the minting fees. I said 10,000 REN, I always mix this up. It's 100,000 REN for a Masternode, so we'll look at those numbers as well. And you can see they have ETH, BSC, Phantom, Polygon, Avalanche, Solana, Arbitrum. More and more stuff every day, more and more chains, more and more complexity, more and more stuff to look at, what to pay attention to, what's important. You can see the minting and burning fees are the same on all the chains here. We can look at the value bonded based on the number of masternodes for the protocol. Obviously, you need these to be robust, geographically distributed by interests and people in order to achieve a specific level of decentralization that probably most people are comfortable with if they're trying to remain anonymous or evade KYC AML stuff. If we look at the assets issued, it looks like most of it is BTC. They also have some Doge on here, Zcash, DGB, and BCH. And you can break this down how much on each chain, but most of it is currently on Ethereum based on value locked, it looks like. Although Solana has quite a bit as well at 300 million, just about. And obviously the fees of the individual chains are going to affect where this TVL sits as well, because if it's cheaper to do it on Solana and you can bridge anything you want anywhere, you're going to do it on Solana, right? If you trust Solana, if Solana is actually working as a blockchain, which currently it is not. At least I think it's still down at the time of recording for this video, Avalanche as well. So just, as many layer ones as you can think of. I'm sure ADA, if it's capable of handling this stuff, eventually will be added to this list. So that just begs the question, if you can trade anything with anything else, is anything worth what it's worth, or are you just arbing stuff in between each chain, and eventually that value is going to equal out based on fees and scaling? I don't know. What does survival of the fittest look like when anything can turn into anything else, kind of through magical alchemy of the blockchain? An interesting thought experiment for sure. If you look at the nodes, there are 1,940 registered, so nearly 2,000 registered. And I believe at one point in time they had this geographically sorted, not currently. But you can see the fees and all the important stats for the nodes. Obviously, if you're a node owner, that's super important for you to know all this information. And how much is a node? So REN is currently 75 cents times 100,000. So currently 75,000 for a REN node. And then you'd have to figure out what's the ROI on that. Is it worth holding? What's the underlying volatility on that? I don't actually know how much each node gets. I assume it's fees divided by nodes, but I don't actually know. Something to look into, obviously, if you are a Masternode person through dark nodes. And TVL has kind of gone all over the place, but it was sitting near all-time highs, at least in USD terms, at around 1 billion as early as a couple days ago. So I think as bridging becomes more popular, stuff that already was doing bridging is going to see an increase in activity in TVL. Because REN is on ETH and ETH fees are high, that's going to change things slightly. But if this thing can bridge anything to anything and it's on all these chains, it's the fees are kind of whatever if you can use Solana or some other chain relative to ETH. So TVL is going to slosh around between those chains, definitely. And if you look at the biggest kind of issuant on REN, it's BTC. And you have here RenBTC versus Wrapped BTC. RenBTC has kind of declined over time, but it's picked up since June as far as issuance and circulating supply. The difference between RenBTC and Wrapped BTC is Wrapped BTC, you need full KYC AML. You need to supply documentation to the issuer for Wrapped BTC. Most of the big capital individuals, 3AC, FTX in the space use Wrapped BTC over RenBTC, I assume, because for regulatory reasons they have to, right? So Wrapped BTC will probably continue to grow, whereas RenBTC, especially if regulatory stuff is coming, I find it difficult for this thing to exist sort of as it should, which is anonymous and through dark pools and all that. So we'll see what happens when it happens, but I'd expect this percentage of market share to just continue to increase for Wrapped BTC relative to RenBTC. What does that mean for the price of Ren? Probably not good at the end of the day, but the protocol works as intended if you use it for its purpose, right? So you can't argue with that use case. Transaction accounts for the token are continuing to decline, have continued to decline since earlier in the year. If everything has a bull run in Q4, I expect these numbers to explode for all of the DeFi tokens, including Ren. So I'd watch for that. Currently, it doesn't look bullish at all. Average transaction values increased substantially because ETH fees increased substantially. So no surprises there. Active addresses also down significantly from February, March. NVT is at a historic low and declining. So NVT probably looks the most bullish amongst the metrics I've discussed so far, in that it just continues to decline. So this says that market cap is not pricing in on-chain activity appropriately, in that this is a good buy signal. MVRV versus price, MVRV in the fill here, price in the line. And for most coins, an MVRV of a 2x multiple or greater has been the top. So currently Ren MVRV is at 1. And this isn't like a 1-to-1 ratio as far as this. It's at 75 cents, so it can go to $1.25 or whatever, $1.50. If this goes to 2, it's just relative to on-chain activity. So if market cap increases slower than on-chain activity, MVRV will decline. If market cap increases faster than on-chain activity, MVRV will increase. And so over time in a bull market, eventually this hits a certain multiple where it's telling you most of this is speculative value and not necessarily fundamental on-chain activity. And usually that's the top. And we kind of have enough data for Ren that we can say, yeah, anything around a 2x multiple is probably a decent place to sell. Definitely something to look to. If Ren goes to $3, I'd look to the MVRV first and say, okay, is this above 2 here? Because it probably is going to be. And if we look at a sell or a buy signal, anything below 1 has generally been in the buy zone. You can see an inverted head and shoulders on price here as well. Even recently, when Ren got to 30 cents, MVRV was at multi-month lows around 0.57. So you can use it as an oscillator for both ends of the spectrum. Flipping gears to technicals, we have the 5200 EMAs, yearly pivots, RSI, and volume on Binance. So most of the volume historically has happened kind of pre-2020 even, prehistoric history at this point. But it has had a series of consolidation patterns that have acted as bullish continuation or bullish reversal, inverted head and shoulders, some sort of triangle. This most recent channel, descending channel, I guess you could call it. You could have called it ascending or inverted head and shoulders, whatever. This broke the 200. Then you had this inverted head and shoulders triple bottom thing along with everything else in crypto. So we bounced from that. 5200 has crossed bullish again. And trend-wise, this looks okay. It looks good for bullish continuation. Is it a 2x? Probably. Is it a 10x or 20x? No, I don't know. I like R5 all-time high retest, basically, which is around $2 from here. RSI's neutral, but I'd watch for another bear div type of situation into all-time high retest levels at $2. The daily cloud is also giving Ren USD its blessing in that it's above the daily cloud. And all of these bull runs started with price being above the daily cloud. So this is why when you see this stuff on high time frames, these settings, blah, 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 you got to say, okay, well, this is bullish. It's certainly up 2x from the bottom or more, but trend-wise, it says this still looks good. It may flounder at this level. It may collapse to 50 cents. I don't know, but trend-wise, this looks good based on backtesting and math. RenBTC also above the daily cloud, not shown, but it also has a pending bullish 5200 cross. The last 5200 cross failed. This is kind of a descending triangle. as well. So if it can break this diag with a bull cross, maybe it has a chance at breaking 2200 sats. Certainly 4K sat, or yeah, 4K sats would be the max level that I'd watch for. Anything above that probably gets overheated, probably has a massive bear div at that point in time. And then Ren ETH has had a bearish 5200 cross since mid-year. It's had a bull div since May, and it's approaching bullish territory outside of the cloud. So you had your bear trend, you had your reversal, and you're starting to see the beginnings of a potential bull trend for Ren ETH. I like it to 650, whatever this is, against ETH, back to that yearly pivot, back to the previous local high. So if regulatory stuff doesn't collapse all of DeFi in its entirety, REN should do pretty good towards the end of the year. I think REN is one of the most vulnerable to KYC AML restrictions because it just breaks the purpose of the protocol. I mean, it's the whole point is to stay anonymous, or at least attempt to, through dark pools. Last, I'll just mention the ETH BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation. REN was in this group at one point in time. It is not currently, but if things start to look up on the up and up again, we may add it back to this list. You can see all the yield plays I'm making here, as well as the trades down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.